Professional actors, you go in and just jump in and do it best of your ability. Can I say one thing? To me, Stanley, the great Stanley Kubrick, was an actor's enemy. And I can point to movies that he's done, the worst performances I've ever seen in his most recent interview with Variety magazine. Robert Duvall, the iconic face of authentic acting in The Godfather and Apocalypse, now shook Hollywood when he frankly pointed out those he would never forgive. At over 90 years old, Duvall no longer keeps silent as he did for decades. Calmly, he recalled the years of betrayal and professional wounds that had never been spoken of. There were people who schemed to take away his assets. There were stars who openly attacked him on live television, shaking his reputation. And most painful of all, the one he once called his first teacher was the very person who initiated the call to isolate him from Hollywood. In the end, which names did Robert Duvall publicly call into the light, and among them, who caused him the deepest wound? 1. Marlon Brando. When idolization became a bitter obsession, the summer of 1971, New York burned like fire. Inside Paramount's studio, the crew of The Godfather was at the height of filming. Francis Ford Coppola, just over 30, thin and sleepless under studio pressure, was constantly tense. Among dozens of nervous people, there was only one who walked slowly, as if the whole world had to wait for him: Marlon Brando. He was already a legend called the soul of American cinema. By time while Robert Duvall was still just a supporting face, a stage actor, just setting foot in Hollywood. On Brando's first day on set, the atmosphere changed. He arrived nearly 2 hours late, cigarette in hand, dark glasses on, with 3 personal assistants. No one dared remind him, a lighting crew member later told the New York Post. When he walked in, the whole crew went silent, as if the president had arrived. At that time, Duvall still idolized Brando. He had watched On the Waterfront and A Streetcar Named Desire until he knew them by heart, believing Brando was the embodiment of freedom and hiding. But only weeks later, admiration turned into discomfort. Brando refused to learn his lines, skipped group script readings, and demanded cue cards be taped all over the set, even on James Caan's back so he could glance at them. A crew member revealed to The New Yorker that he once stood behind the camera for 6 straight hours holding dialogue boards for Brando to read. We called it an acting class in poor memory. What disappointed Duvall most was the way Brando used unpredictability to dominate the set. In emotional scenes, Brando often deliberately changed lines, disrupting his co-star's rhythm and forcing multiple retakes. He never let anyone know what he was going to do, sometimes saying things completely different from the script. Coppola, who idolized Brando, tolerated it. To Duvall, this wasn't creative genius, but chaos with a layer of gloss. In March 1972, The Godfather premiered and became a cultural phenomenon. Brando was hailed as the perfect Don, while Duvall was simply praised as solid. Shortly after, Variety revealed that Brando was given an extra $50,000 bonus by Paramount for his media effect, while no one else received anything. The leak from internal accounting stirred the crew. A Los Angeles Times journalist described Duvall left the press conference early, his face like stone. A year later, Brando stunned the world. On March 27, 1973, at the Academy Awards in Los Angeles, when his name was announced for Best Actor, Brando did not appear. Instead, he sent Native American activist Sachin Littlefeather to the stage to decline the statue, protesting Hollywood's distortion of indigenous images. The act was broadcast live across America. Half the nation praised him as a truth-teller. The other half called him reckless. Duvall at home in Los Angeles watched it all. The next morning, headlines screamed, "Brando turns the Oscars into a political stage." For Duvall, that was the final straw. He saw it as a betrayal of those who had built the film. From then, Brando grew stranger. On The Tonight Show in 1975, he brought a real parrot, leaving Johnny Carson speechless. In 1978, he threw a Los Angeles Herald reporter out of his mansion for daring to ask about his weight. Hollywood began to see Brando as a brilliant madman, while Duvall called it a symphony of self-destruction. By 1990, real-life tragedy erupted. His son, Christian Brando, shot the boyfriend of his sister, Cheyenne, at their Beverly Hills mansion. Special reports ran nonstop for a week on NBC, CNN, and ABC News. The whole nation was shocked. During the nearly 2-year trial, Brando sat silently in the audience, hair gray, face heavy. He wept when his son was sentenced to 10 years in prison. The media called it the Corleone tragedy in real life. Christian went to prison. Cheyenne suffered depression and later ended her life in Tahiti. Brando spent his last years in isolation, weighing nearly 140 kilograms, avoiding the press. Esquire wrote, Brando once created a great Don Vito Corleone, then lived the rest of his life becoming that man himself. In 1991, when asked, Duvall simply said at a Beverly Hills press conference, "Genius. Sometimes it's just chaos filmed up close." After that, he never mentioned Brando again. In 2004, Brando passed away in Los Angeles at 80. His funeral at Hillside Memorial gathered hundreds of stars, but Duvall was absent. A former Godfather crew member said he sent Coppola a plain white card with only 3 words: "Let it end." Of all the conflicts Duvall endured, only Brando left him both awed and disillusioned, a monument collapsing before his eyes, instilling in him the fear that talent without discipline ends in ruin. But a few years later, Robert Duvall stepped into another complicated relationship. Not with an older legend, but with someone who once called him brother on the set of The Godfather, Al Pacino. Al Pacino, when a colleague turned into an invisible rival. By the mid-1970s, Hollywood adored 2 kinds of men. One was quiet, reserved, monk-like Robert Duvall. The other was fiery and tense, able to command every spotlight when he entered Al Pacino. The two were once close friends, nearly inseparable during the early 1970s when The Godfather was being made. According to an old Los Angeles Herald-Examiner article, Duvall and Pacino once shared a small apartment in Beverly Glen. They ate canned noodles, split the rent, and studied lines late into the night. Duvall helped Pacino with breathing techniques. Pacino taught Duvall how to keep the rage in your eyes when the camera comes in. They saw each other as brothers. On the set of The Godfather Party, people often saw the two joking in a trailer, sharing cold coffee, talking about making films from the heart, not for fame. But things changed after Part 2 was released in 1974. The sequel turned Al Pacino into an international superstar. He appeared everywhere. Covers of Time, Rolling Stone People. Meanwhile, though praised as the most reliable man on screen, Duvall withdrew from the noise. He went back to his Virginia farm, raised horses, read plays, and only accepted roles he truly liked. Their diverging paths opened an invisible gap they never admitted. In 1989, Paramount announced The Godfather Part 3. Hollywood erupted. Variety called it the reunion of the century. Coppola wanted the old cast back. Both Pacino and Duvall were invited. Early talks were smooth until the numbers appeared in the contract. According to Hollywood Reporter, Paramount offered Pacino $5 million plus, 5% of box office profits, while Duvall was offered just $1 million, not even a fifth. On September 4, 1989, Variety's front page read, "Paramount bets on Pacino, forgets Duvall." Inside the studio, tension grew. A PR staffer recalled Duvall read the contract 3 times, said nothing through the meeting, then stood up and left. Days later, he faxed Coppola, writing briefly, "I don't want to return just to be someone's backdrop." When Duvall's withdrawal was confirmed, New York Post described it as a heartbreaking crack in the wall of icons. The character Tom Hagen, once the moral compass of the first 2 films, was erased, only mentioned in a single line. Some reports claimed Coppola tried to persuade Pacino to cut his pay so Duvall could stay, but Pacino refused. An Entertainment Weekly investigation quoted a Paramount insider. Pacino simply said, "That's the studio's business, not mine." That remark became the center of debate. Public opinion compared, one chose fame, the other principle. On December 20th, 1990, The Posh Father Part 3 premiered at Mann's Chinese Theater, Los Angeles. The whole cast was present except Robert Duvall, according to Los Angeles Times. That very morning, he flew back to Virginia, avoiding the press. A close friend said, "Aha." He couldn't bear hearing the theme song without Tom Hagen's face. The film was financially successful, but critics called it a film without a soul. Chicago Tribune wrote, "When Duvall left, The Godfather lost its voice of reason." After that, Duvall nearly vanished from noisy Hollywood, only returning with smaller projects like Tender Mercies or The Apostle. While Pacino continued climbing to the top, living in flashes and tabloid scandals. By the 2000s, magazines like People and Page Six mentioned Pacino almost monthly. From his romance with Diane Keaton to Beverly D'Angelo to the younger actress Lucilla Sola, each provided new headlines. Duvall, who hated flamboyance, avoided any questions about old friend Pacino. In June 2023, Hollywood shook again. TMZ and Daily Mail reported that Pacino at 83 was expecting a child with his 29-year-old partner. Morning shows on ABC and E! News ran the story all day. At the AFI Lifetime Achievement Awards ceremony in Los Angeles the following month, a Vanity Fair reporter spotted Robert Duvall sitting in the back row, avoiding cameras. A 4.